In this video, we're going to take a look at how to do the wrap and turn on the top-down Softie jumper. Now for this demo, I've done a shorter version of the rib and I'm going to work on the circular needles. And I'm using coral because I think it'll show up the stitches. If you want to look at the increases in detail, there's a separate video for that. I'll just do them in this video and concentrate on the wraps and turns. So for that, check out the other parts in the group. So I have worked around to my beginning of the round marker. And I'm ready to start row 1 of the short row shaping. Now the reason for the short row shaping is to make your jumper deeper at the back than it is at the front, so you've got a nice neckline. So that means that on part of our round, we're going to have more rows of knitting in the short row section than others. So we'll be working back and forth over the sleeves and the back, but not working so many of the front stitches. So to get started, we'll just shift our stitches on the needle. You could do this on DPNs, there's no reason why not. I just thought for this demo I would use the circular, as it's my preference. So there I am, I'm back at the beginning of the round marker and we're ready to go. So our first instruction tells us to knit 1, so we'll do that. And then we're going to make 1. Right, so make 1 left, but as I say, that's in the other video. And then we're going to knit to the next 1 stitch before the next marker. Quite a lot of knitting in this bit, and not a lot of talking, I suppose. And now we're ready for our next make 1. And then it's knit 1. And I'm slipping the marker. And I'll do my next increase. And then once I've got to all the end of the increases, it tells me to knit 1. And then we come to W and T. So W and T is wrap and turn. There's a number of stages to this. So we're going to start with bringing our yarn to the front, slipping the next stitch, bringing our yarn back and slipping our stitch back. And you'll see we've got a stitch that is wrapped. And then the turn bit is exactly what it sounds like. We're turning round and going back the other way. And now I am purling back, and it's telling me to purl back now to the beginning of the round marker, which isn't this one. It's my skull marker, so that's where I'm going to purl back to. And then we'll see what happens after that. So now it's telling me to slip the marker and do an increase. Do an increase. And then I'm going to follow the instructions without dropping the stitches. I'm going to follow the instructions around until I get to the next wrap and turn. That will mean working the increases at the markers and doing all the purl stitches, and then we'll see what happens, what we do at that side. So I've now worked all of short row 2 round to where it's asking me for another wrap and turn. And it's just the same technique on the purl side. I'm going to go to my opposite side, so I'm going forward this time. I'm slipping my stitch, I'm bringing my yarn back and I'm slipping my stitch. So again, my stitch is wrapped and I'm ready to turn round and knit back the way I came, following the instructions in the pattern again. And next time when we get to the end, we'll do the second part of the wrap and turn technique. So I'm going to follow the instructions till I knit round to my beginning of the round marker and slightly beyond. So now I've knit all the way round for short row 3, and I've gone past my beginning of round marker. So I'm now coming across the top of what will become the top of your sleeve again. And now I'm going to follow the instructions and I'm going to work slightly more into the front this time. So here it asks you at the end of row 3, you're going to slip that last marker, show it to the front and it doesn't catch, knit one, and then we're going to do our next increase. And this time it tells me to knit 3, but to remember to pick up the wrapped stitch. Now that's where it might be a bit confusing. And here, if you look, we've got one stitch that's got a loop of yarn around it. And that is our wrapped stitch. So to go on past that, we're going to need to lift that wrap up. So what we do is we knit 1, 2, and our wrap stitch is the third of our knit stitches. So what I want to do is I want to lift the loop of the wrap up onto my needle. So I've now got 2 loops for that stitch. And what I want is to rearrange the loops so the stitch, the real stitch, is in front of the loop from the wrap. So I just slip them back and forth to rearrange them. And when I've got them arranged so my stitch is in the front, I just knit them together. And now I'm going to check that I'm in the right place. So I had those are my knit 3. So I had my knit 1, my increase, my knit 1, 2, 3. So I'm ready to wrap and turn again. So just like before, I'm slipping my stitch, I'm moving my yarn to the back, and I'm slipping my stitch back to secure it before I turn. So once again, we have a stitch that's wrapped and we're ready to purl back the other direction and do row 4. And again, we'll stop at the other end to see what happens when we reach the wrap stitch at that end. So now I'm getting back to the last marker on short row 4. So we're just purling along. Again, I'm just doing my increases, but watch the other video for the details on that. Once I've done my increases, it's asking me to purl 3, remembering to pick up the loop of the wrap. Now, when you're looking for your wrap stitch, you'll see there's a bit of a gap when you push them back and forth on your needle, and as well as the little loop around your needle, that's the other trick for finding them. So again, it's asking me to purl 3, and I know my wrapped stitch is the last one of those. Let's do that one again. And we're ready to go again. So this time I'm looking for my loop again. I'm just trying to find that, and I'm trying to lift it up onto the needle. And then I want to arrange things again so that when I purl, the loop, which is this one, will sit to the wrong side of my stitch. And sometimes you have to just pick them up a couple of times and slip them back and forth like I'm doing here. So you've got them arranged. Now, don't worry about that, that's perfectly normal. Just make sure that you end up with the loop from the wrap and the loop from the stitch arranged so you can insert your needle. I'm going to do it through the back of the loop and purl the two together. And then I'm ready to wrap my next stitch. And I will show you these pick up of the loops on a small swatch as well in a minute so we can get a better look at it. Right, let's take a closer look at wrap and turn on this little swatch. So I'm going to just knit across my swatch till I am about 5 stitches from the end. And then I'm going to do my first wrap and turn. So if you remember from before, we bring our yarn forward, slip the stitch, bring the yarn back, and slip the stitch back to the left needle so that you've got a piece of yarn wrapped around that stitch. And then we turn. So now I'm going to purl back a few. We'll do the same thing on the other side. I'm taking my yarn back, slipping my stitch, bringing my yarn forward and slipping my stitch back so my yarn is trapped behind the slip stitch, and turn again. So now I've got a wrapped stitch at each end. And if we look here, you can see the gap after the wrapped stitch as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work to my wrapped stitch, pick up the loop, and then wrap the next stitch, which is the same as what's happening in the sweater pattern. So you can see as we come up to the wrap stitch how we get that sort of gap in our knitting, and it's quite clear. So it's very easy to spot. So I've now reached the wrap stitch. What I'm doing is I'm finding the wrap and I'm popping it up onto the needle. And then I'm having a bit of a tidy up. So I'm separating those two loops. And I'm looking to see, there's my stitch and there's my loop. So if I turn my stitch round, I can knit into the back of the two loops and bring them together, which hides the wrap behind your work. You just see a normal stitch. And now we're ready to wrap and turn the next stitch. And you can do it like that as well. You can slip your stitch back after the turn, whatever is most comfortable for you. But what you want is, before you start working again, to make sure that your yarn is secured behind a slipped stitch. So I'm now purling back, and I'm looking to go one beyond the wrapped stitch on the other side. So again, we can see that coming up. We can see the gap coming up. So one more. Then I've reached my wrap stitch. I'm looking for my loop again. So I'm lifting the loop of my wrap up onto my needle. And I'm having a little bit of a rearrange. Sometimes it's easy just to slip the two onto your right needle and slip them back again. It just helps you see where everything is. But that's all right because my loop is behind my actual stitch, so I can purl them together. You'll see they're neat when we turn it around in a moment. And then I can do my wrap of the next stitch. Let's slip it back and turn round again. And you'll see again, there's the wrap stitch. I picked up and worked the loop behind, and it's all neat and tidy. I'll just go to the other end again once more. Because in the pattern you're doing this, you'll keep going. That each row, you will work a little bit further around the neck and the shoulders. And each time you'll be getting to a wrap stitch. You want to pick up that loop. You want to rearrange your stitches so that your stitch is in the front and your wrap loop is to the reverse of your work. Work the two together and wrap the next stitch. Ready to turn around. And honestly, that's all there is to it.